Hello, Rama Rama Pupodu. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, having a nice and happy life. Now let's go to chapter 42. Una, Bombay, the dose of poison. In due time, Ramdas arrived with Bobat Pai at Veraval, a prominent seaport on the Kathiawar coast. Here, they stopped with a Gujarati doctor in his hospital who took them in the evening to attend the kirtan and discourse of a saintly householder in the city. They had also visited Prabhaspatan, where, according to Bhagavat Puran, the Yadavas, members of Sri Krishna's vast family, fought among themselves, bringing about the total destruction of their race. Here is an extensive plain, was a small enclosure in which there stood an ancient peepal tree. The fence was of iron bars planted on low walls. In the niche of one of the walls was seen an image of Sri Krishna in a reclining posture. It was said that this was the spot where Sri Krishna shuffled off his body as a result of his being hit by an arrow from the bow of a passing hunter. It was arranged to start from Veraval by a cargo brig that was bound for Una. The brig was an open boat filled with gunny bags of merchandise. It was to leave the port in the night. So early at night, Ramdas and Bobat Pai boarded the vessel. The season was winter, hence the cold was severe. The cutting sea breeze blew over the boat with full force. They possessed hardly any extra clothing. They coiled themselves in the hollows between the bags and covered themselves with the only single cotton cloth they each had. The boat left the shores at about 10 in the night. It was believed at first that the boat would reach the port at Una by the ensuing morning, but for lack of wind, the boat made very slow progress. Morning dawned, and they were still far away from the destination. Cold in the night was now succeeded by the heat of the sun. They were well nigh fried in the sun the whole day. The boat having reached its destination past 6 in the evening, they had also to observe a partial fast, for they had no food to eat except a plantain each, and they even drank no water. At the landing place, the odor of dried fish that filled the air was too much for Bobat Boy. He expressed his disgust in strong terms and did not wish to take this route for the return journey. On landing, they met Magan Lal and another friend who had come to receive them. A 6-mile walk brought them to Una. Ramdas and Bobat Bhai remained with Magan Lal in his rooms on the ground floor of a big building, the upstairs of which was occupied by a Parsi chemist and his family. Magan Lal was living alone. The news of Ramdas' arrival spread in the town, and many people came to see him, of whom mention has to be made of the Parsi chemist, Dr. Mahadeva, a Koja, and the schoolmasters. Ramdas had invitations to dinner from the doctor and the Parsi chemist. Their children and wives also treated Ramdas with great kindness. The Parsi chemist, a quiet, earnest, and simple soul, spent most of his time in Ramdas' company. He was so much enamored of Ram Nam that he commenced repeating it ceaselessly. One day, an incident happened which tended to strengthen his faith in God. While he was sitting with Ramdas, a traveling agent of drugstores came to interview the chemist's friend. In the course of their business talk, the Parsi chemist asked the agent to supply him with a certain poisonous drug. The agent expressed his surprise that the chemist's talk of that drug should have gone off so soon, as he had supplied the stuff a good quantity only very recently. Then the question came up as to what was the maximum dose of the drug. Now the Parsi friend came to know that he had that day given to a patient a dose of that same drug by mistake 20 times the quantity of the maximum dose. The medicine was to be taken at 7 o'clock in the evening, and the talk here was going on at about the same time. The Parsi, coming to realize the consequences of his oversight, got truly frightened. and, losing no time, directly ran up to the patient's house. But fortunately for him, the patient had not swallowed the death-dealing dose of poison. He snatched away the packet of the powder and hastened back to where Ramdas sat, and falling at his feet, said with great emotion, his eyes filled with tears, "Swamiji, you have saved me today from the gallows. It is all due to your kindness." Then he narrated the whole story. "It is the remembrance of God that saved you, friend. The Savior is always God," Ramdas replied. For this lapse on his part, he undertook a fast of 3 days, during which he subsisted merely on water, and Ram Nam never left his lips. He also eschewed sleep at night. The Ram mantram rang on his tongue continuously. Visits to the sugarcane fields of the Koja friend, where he was given a cool drink of the cane juice, and to the noted shrine of Mahadev in the shrubs of the town comprised the other events of Ramdas' earlier part of stay in Una. Latterly, he was presented to the boys of the local high school, in which Magan Lal was a teacher, and also to the girls of 2 primary schools. In all of them, Ramdas delivered short speeches upon the right conduct of boys and girls. While returning from the high school, he joined in the game of cricket with the boys on the playground. When he stood up for bowling, his very first ball knocked off the mid-wicket. Amidst the laughter of the onlookers on, Ramdas left the field. In the hospital, there was a post-mortem examination over the body of a young man who had died by an accident. With the permission of the doctor, Bobat Pai was present at the examination. He carefully scrutinized all over the internal organs of the human body. Directly it was over, he came to Ramdas and remarked, "Swamiji, the stomach in our body is after all such a small bag that I wonder why we stuff it with so much food. The stomach, judging from its size, needs only a small quantity of food. We must be overfilling it, causing it to bulge out and produce a pot belly." Ramdas laughed, as also the other friends who listened to his humorous but pertinent observations. Dr. Mahadevia belonged to the Tilak school of thought. He had many a discussion with Ramdas on the question of non-violence. Ramdas remained in Una for over a week, and his time of departure came. Bobat Pai would not agree to travel by the sea route, so a bullock cart was engaged to convey them to Verawal. They were warned that the road was very bad. The cart was half filled with straw, on top of which was spread a thick mattress with 2 pillows. The sides of the carriage were fenced with loose ropes. As the cart progressed, they found it impossible to assume the sitting posture. The stalwart bullocks dragged the cart behind them ruthlessly over the hard, dry, rocky, and uneven track. The cart rolled on, swaying from side to side, punctuated with sudden thuds and knocks. The occupants of the cart now and again bumped against each other. They had to clutch at the loose ropes on the fence for the very life, lest they should be thrown out on the road through the wide gaps in the cross ropes. Sleep and rest were out of question. For all their efforts, they could not retain a single position for more than a minute. They seemed to be a pair of sardines just out of the sea on the dry sands, fluttering and leaping over each other. What with the sudden jumps of the cart and the clash of the bodies, their very bones seemed to rattle in their frames. Ramdas laughed and laughed at the unique experience and said with a great amount of truth, "Out of the frying pan into the fire." Bobat Pai was silent. The distance to be covered before they could reach Verawal was about 48 miles and would take not less than full 24 hours. For an hour, at long intervals, there were 4 halts at the wave-wide villages. When there were only 10 miles still left to reach Verawal, Ramdas jumped out of the cart and proposed to walk the distance, and Bobat Pai followed suit. At dusk, they reached Verawal. The cart arrived later. Except for the loss of a pillow, which must have dropped on the road, there was no other mishap. The night was spent in a small room on the 3rd story of a huge business house belonging to a young merchant. Now Bobat Bai, who is a man of simple habits, had a deep-rooted dislike for smoking. He would go about advising every smoker who came in contact with him to give up the habit. At the same time, expatiating upon its manifold evils. But by a strange irony of fate, he was the storekeeper of bidis for Ramdas, who was given to smoking. His high regard for Ramdas would not permit of his looking upon this habit of Ramdas as condemnatory. In the small room he smoked, the windows being very high and small in size, the clouds of the smoke gathered in the room thick and fast. Ramji, the nauseating smell of smoke must be very trying to your nostrils, unused to it, remarked Ramdas. Not at all, he replied quickly. On the contrary, the smoke you puff out has been purifying the atmosphere. Verily, true love sees no defects, and this is the greatest quality of love. That's all, folks. Let's see in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Pupodu.